Well, welcome to another premiere. I'm just winding a quick bobbin on this 332, and I did well until the end, and then it kind of, when it stopped spinning, it decided to wrap around that spool pin right there. So let me zoom in on this a little bit, and I'll get some other lights on as well. I've been asked before about winding a bobbin on the PFAFF 332. So I wanted to open this winding a bobbin so you can kind of see how that setup is, because what seems real straightforward can sometimes be a little bit tricky. So obviously, coming off of the spool pin right here, if you imagine that there's a spool there, I just took it off. Then we kind of come over to here by this control, and on the top part of this control, which on the machine is going to be Control E, as in Edward. This is actually our tensioner for winding a bobbin right here. So coming off the spool, you kind of come through the top of this little control center, and it gives you your tensioner. Then right here, you've got a thread guide. I'll kind of follow that along. Right there, you've got a thread guide on the front, and then you follow it right back to the bobbin, and you can see how beautifully the machine wound that bobbin evenly, perfectly. And when you start to bring that thread around that bobbin to get it kind of pre-wound before you start actually winding it, you'll want to go around that bobbin counterclockwise. And then hold onto that string, go ahead and engage it as if you're winding with this right here. And you saw how it auto-engaged exactly as it's supposed to. But you'll engage it, make sure you disengage your clutch, and then go ahead and hit that foot controller, and you'll have a beautifully wound bobbin. And I wasn't even close to pushing down on that foot controller, so you can imagine if you really wanted to gun it, you could really spin that puppy up real quick. And I always just kind of keep a little bit of a finger, you may have seen me doing that, I keep kind of a finger on the top of the spool, because that spool is spinning fast and furious, and it just kind of gives it a little bit more of a steady, even flow of thread as the thread is passing between the tensioner here, this thread guide, and then ultimately back to the bobbin itself that you're winding. So there you go. If you've wondered how to wind a bobbin on the 332, or you've done it a different way, that's how you want to set it up. And all machines are different. Some machines, when you're coming off, you'll have to kind of come all the way around that thread tensioner, a full cycle, and then come to that thread guide. This one you don't have to. You can just go here, here, and then there, and you're all set to rock and roll. So, you know, never be afraid to go to your owner's manual if you have that as a resource. Otherwise, you can always come to this channel and check out the different videos, many of which will probably give you the tips that you're looking for. So I'm going to set this bobbin to the side that we just wound, and we'll see if we can't launch into some sew-offs. First of all, in front of Herr Obermeister, I'm going to kind of widen this shot and drop down a little bit. By the way, Herr Obermeister, very good dancing. I thought that was fabulous. So some of the initial sew-offs that I did that Herr Obermeister will be kind enough to kind of hold for me, just show you the decorative side of this. And you've seen 332s on this channel multiple times, so you're probably very familiar with some of these stitch patterns. But the beauty again is the machine has all of these cam generated stitches engineered into the machine. Yes, Herr Obermeister, you're right. You're absolutely right. Germans are very smart. The Germans are very smart. And you can see I did some off-camera stitch-offs as well, some basic zigzags, modified zigzags, straight stitching, etc. So the machine is ready to rock and roll. And this particular machine is going to be rocking and rolling down in Conroe, Texas. Conroe, Texas is where Jane Cox is, and Jane is going to be using this for a wide scope of sewing projects. And the PFAFF 332, 332, is the perfect machine when you're looking at a diverse type of approach to sewing. It can do heavy duty. It can do embroidery. It can do freehand type embroidery as well by dropping the feed dogs. It really has an incredible amount of flexibility in what it can deliver down to the needle. And it's also, once you get to know it and you get past the initial intimidation of all of these controls on this machine, what? It really is a fairly easy machine to learn to sew on and to fall in love with. And I'll just briefly go around the machine right now because we're going to be, during this premiere, we're going to be doing some decorative sewing which requires setting some of those different control points, and I just want you to feel comfortable with that, whether you have a 332 now or whether you're potentially going to be getting a machine soon like this one. And I'll also mention that the brothers of the 332 that are going to be using exactly the same type of stitch setup, control setup, and stitch output, matter of fact, they use the same stitch card, is also the Model 230 and the Model 338. So all three of those machines, the 230 to the 332 that you're looking at on camera, and then ultimately the 338, are going to be set up pretty much the same way. Some of them are going to have slight variations in how that pulley drive system is set up on the right side of the machine. But all in all, they're going to be virtually brothers of the same mother, if you will. And since we're talking about Germany, they're all going to be brothers of the same motherland in Deutschland. So fabulous machine, and it looks like it's not definite, it's not guaranteed, but it's, I would say it's about 80% of the way there. I've been having a lot of conversations with my new friend Heidi from Switzerland. And Heidi is going to be stepping into the space of making different types of shoes. And we talked a lot about the layers that she's going to be working with, the number of ounces of leather, and just all the particulars that I was able to garner from our conversations of what her goals are for a machine. And so I'm going to be preparing a very similar machine to what you're looking at on camera right now that should eventually be packed up and be heading all the way over to Switzerland. And I have no idea how many miles that is off the top of my head. I suppose I could look it up real quick out of curiosity. And I don't want to steal any thunder from Jane Cox because this is about her machine, her 332 that's going to be heading over to Conroe, Texas. But what the heck, we'll just look it up real quick out of curiosity. All right, so distance from Oconto, Wisconsin to Switzerland.
Distance from Oconto to Switzerland is 4,309 miles.
Let's try that again. I had the volume down too low. Some of you may have caught that. They'd have real good. Distance from Oconto, Wisconsin to Switzerland.
The distance from Oconto to Switzerland is 4,309 miles.
So 4,300 miles is how far potentially my packing process is going to be tested again. That'll be a treat. And again, depending on the distance that a machine is going to travel, I will add a couple of extra elements to the packing just to raise that bar even higher. So you may see that if all of this comes together and I end up preparing a machine similar to this for Heidi from Switzerland, by all means I'll premiere it, and then I'll also probably do a packing premiere of it as well, so you can just see, you know, the process is going to be pretty much a mirror and match from other packing videos you've seen for similar machines, but it's probably going to add just a few extra buffers of protection considering we're going to be traveling over 4,000 miles. And that's not the longest that I've shipped. I've shipped over to Japan, I've shipped to Australia, I've shipped many other places. So I'm not going to get stressed over it, but I am going to be vigilant. So, all right, so let's go around this machine just briefly, and then we will launch into some sew-offs on this machine. And I've got to rewind a little bit and confess something to you. This machine, and then also the machine that I sent to my friend over in Arkansas, both of them 332s. The one that went to Arkansas was a little bit newer of a, a little bit older of a version of the 332. And it didn't have the embroidery engineering into it. It was strictly a straight stitch zigzag that went to Arkansas. This one was on the same workbench, the other workbench next to that one, and I kind of talked about those machines a little bit and introduced them to you and explained that the customers were wanting to get them right away and that I wasn't going to go ahead and premiere them. Well, that remained true for my friend Ann, that lives in Arkansas, that got the other 332, the older version, but there was some follow-up with Jane, and we decided that we were going to go ahead and premiere this machine anyway. So that's why you're seeing this machine appear now for my friend Jane Cox out of Conroe, Texas. So walking around this machine a little bit real quick, right near Herr Obermeister, who's doing, by the way, a fabulous job. Fantastisch, sehr gut, wunderbar, in holding that stitch display beautifully. Beautiful job, Herr Obermeister. Okay, so here we've got feed dog drop right there. We've got our beautiful PFAFF branding mark made in Germany. Then we have this toggle switch to turn the light on and off. And again, this is not original to the machine. Originally, it would have had a plastic little button sticking out, but inevitably, because on these PFAFFs, because of the type of plastics that they use, they become brittle over time, and that particular one broke off, so I had to replace it with a toggle switch, which works beautifully. I mean, it's very easy. Right now it's on, flip it off, turn it back on. It works very nicely, and it's metal, so it's not going to have that issue of degrading over time and becoming brittle. So then moving up the machine a little bit, we're going to move to this control center right here. Here we've got a couple things going on. The white outer type knob that you see, this control, is going to allow you to go into reverse if you want. If you want to go into reverse, you're going to push it to the left. If you want to resume sewing forward again, you're going to push it back to the right. The outer one, this metal control that goes around here, is going to allow you to change stitch length on this 332. And it's got a wide range of stitch length. I would say anything from around... Can you see that Z on there? Oh my gosh. I was going over it and I must have somehow missed that spot, which I need to resolve real quick right now. I use different conditioning solutions for the surface of the machine so that it's safe, and I somehow missed that. See, that's what I say, when you look at things on camera, it magnifies it dramatically, which is why I always try to get so close to the machine so y'all can see things close up and personal, but sometimes it reveals something that I don't want you to see. So I'm going to lock this clutch again too while I'm thinking about it after we just got done winding that bobbin. So again, rewind after I got rid of the Z, almost kind of like Zorro. Zorro was here and left his mark. The white control again on the outside is for reverse. The silver one that you see on the inside is for stitch length. And what I was beginning to mention when I got distracted by that Z is the PFAFF 332 has an incredible range of stitch length. Anything from right around 5 stitches per inch all the way up to 30, all the way up or down to, depending on how you look at it, 30 stitches per inch. So teeny tiny all the way to quite large stitches. It actually will generate larger stitch lengths than even the Singer machines. So that is bragging rights for the PFAFF. So up here, you already saw this region right up here pretty much. I'll come out on the shot a little bit. You already saw this region up here because we were just winding the bobbin. But again, I'll point out a couple things to you. 2 spool pins, obviously. So the same track that we used for winding a bobbin when we came through here off of that tensioner, you could also use this to run a second thread for dual needle sewing if you wanted to. So this machine obviously has the capacity for dual needle sewing. Now the control is kind of moving from the top to the bottom. Right here I already kind of pointed at Control E, which is the same point where you'll run that thread through to wind the bobbin. Right on the front of here we have Control B, the one right here in the middle. I'm just trying to see if you can, yeah, you can see that. My camera shot is correct. Right here you've got Control D. Control C is this right here. And then finally, all the way up on top is Control A. Now I'll go the opposite way and I'll explain what they do as I've done in other Premieres. Control A and B are going to work to basically generate the cam stitch output of the machine. So Control A and B are the setting points so you can choose your cam output stitches. Then we go down to Control C right here, which is going to control needle position. Control D is going to control stitch length. And also, in some instances, Control D is also going to allow you to control other functions of the cam output as well. And then last but not least, I kind of jumped past A, B, C, and D. All the way on top is Control E again, and what Control E does is it's your on and off switch for generating cam stitches from this machine. And again, the cam stack is built into this machine. You don't have to add any cams to it. So, but it's important to note when you're setting the different stitch outputs for the cam functions, if you go ahead and set position A, position B, C, D, and you forget to turn on the Control E to activate or to actuate the cam function, and you set all those other points, but this is still set on 0 up here, then all you're going to get is basically a zigzag. So always remember to set all of your points, because when you look at a stitch card for this machine, it's not going to have a setting for E, because all E is going to do is actuate the cam, and then it has different ranges within it as far as setting the shape and the conformity of how that stitch presents. Apart from that, all it is an on and off switch. But it's a very important on and off switch when you're trying to use the cam functions of this machine. And then we have these other controls here. This is going to let you lower and raise the light when you want to change out the bulb. I've already added an LED light for this machine so that Jane is all set to enjoy sewing. And then this control right here, this little white one, is going to let you set parameters and boundaries when you're doing buttonholing. And that's about all that's about all that does. That's all about all that does. And I didn't specifically show you, but this control point A has a little door that opens and closes, and it allows you to turn this knob, as you might see me doing some of the stitch offs that we decide to execute during this premiere today. But like I showed you already down by Herr Obermeister, I've already tested that function, and I know that it works perfectly. All right, what else? What else? I think that about covers it, really, as far as a walk around the machine. This also has an auto needle threader as well, that if I kind of zoom over here near the needle, you may be able to see me activate that, kind of lower it down. I never use them, quite honestly, but a lot of people do like them. They inevitably, because of their design, though, they run into issues with not working correctly, where when they drop down like you just saw me do, what they're supposed to do then is rotate from front to back so that it kind of pushes that thread through the needle eye. But again, great intentions, not always great outcomes in design features on a machine. So, all right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we do some decorative type sewing? And I'm going to come out like this. If I can actually speak today, that would be great. I'm actually going to come out like this so you can just see, and I've already set the points, just to be perfectly honest with you. I wanted to get ahead of the game, so I've already set the points on the machine to do a specific decorative stitch output. And I'm just going to verify which stitch I selected against. 7 is there, 7 on A. Do I have 3 on B? Yep, 3 on B. C is just going to be free floating, because it's going to be changing needle position through the cycle of sewing. And then D we have on 0. Okay, so what I'm going to be attempting to stitch here, and I'm going to hold this up to the camera so hopefully you can see it, is that stitch right above the numbers. So I'm going to be setting A on 7, B on 3. C is going to be exactly where it is. It can be anywhere because it's going to be floating. And then D is going to be on 0. So again, what that looks like is up here. I'll open this door. I've already set it on 7. You're going to be turning this again clockwise. This little knob right here that's just inside of that door. So I've already set it on 7. I set B, which is right here, on 3. C is going to be floating. In other words, you're going to see it moving as we're sewing this stitch. And then D is on 0, which again is going to be our stitch width in this instance. Okay, and what I'm going to be doing is initially I was going to use one type of material, but it was too dark and it was kind of a blue hue. Try saying that really fast. Blue hue. And so it didn't show up. So I ended up picking some genuine cowhide leather for us to do some of these decorative stitches on. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this. And I will probably leave the shot similar to this just so you can see the action. I think the action again of what the machine does in essence manipulating a zigzag needle swing type stitch pattern very precisely to generate these really cool cam generated stitches. All right, let's do this initial sew off, no music. I'm going to move Herr Obermeister to the back just so he's safe. And I'll let him continue to hold on to our initial sew off there. Let's go ahead and get the leather into place. And this again is genuine cowhide. It's nothing lightweight at all, but it is a single layer, which generally works pretty well for decorative sewing. It's going to give you that stabilized type platform to lay down the stitch with that much needle swing, but it's not going to be so thick that it makes it difficult for that thread to be sucked back up. So let me just check my tensions and everything. I think that they're pretty much spot on. Our settings are all correct. And the only other thing I didn't mention is I did move our stitch length over here. I don't know if that's in the camera shot or not. I did move our stitch, it's kind of off camera, right? I'm right over here. I did move our stitch length from its maximum of 5 all the way down to right around just above 1, so that it gives a little bit better definition on that stitch. All right, so my take-up arm's all the way up. Let's go ahead and listen to this machine and watch it lay down this first decorative stitch off. All right, here we go. It just does it with so much ease, it's ridiculous. So much ease, it's absolutely ridiculous. And I can see that this one I could have gone even shorter, and probably will go a little bit shorter on that stitch length, just to give it a little bit better definition. But it did a beautiful job in laying that down. Beautiful job. Whoops. That is some happy material. And I'm going to show you these at the end, just because I think it makes it a lot easier if we just kind of continue to march through. And so I just made a slight adjustment on the stitch length, and we'll just see what effect it has. Again, when you're working with cam generated stitch patterns, it's going to give you certain parameters that you are kind of mandated to follow, but other ones you can use your discretion on. And it doesn't give us specifics on setting stitch length, so I'm kind of using my discretion on that. So let's go ahead and buzz down it one more time. The only change I made is I shortened that stitch length just a little bit more. So we'll see what impact, if any, it has on this particular stitch pattern that we selected. All right, here we go. Yeah, I like that better. It's only a subtle difference, but the subtlety of it is kind of what I was looking for. So I'll show all these to you at the end once we're done with all this. And the other quick little adjustment I just did, you may have seen, is I adjusted Control E. Again, it's going to be an on-off switch for cam functions, but there are settings on it from 13570. Zero is going to be, it's not going to be running the cams at all. So I took it from 3 down to 2 just to see what impact it has. Because again, what it's going to do is it's going to change the shape, kind of the definition of that stitch just slightly as far as the output. So let's pick another stitch now, and I will show you that stitch once we've selected it. Okay, let's try this one. Y'all know I love the building block one, so this is what we're going to try to sew next. Let me just rotate my screen back so I can hold it up and kind of see what you're seeing. So we're going to try to do this building block one now, which means we have to set Control A to 1. Control B is already on 3, so we don't touch that at all. Control D is already on 0, so we don't have to touch that at all either. And then Control C is going to be floating. So what you're going to see me do on camera now, I'll bump this up just slightly, come out a little bit. So you're going to see me open that little door on top, and I'm going to be turning that control mechanism from 7 to 1. And again, you want to turn it clockwise. So there's 8 and there's 1. So we're already on 1. That was real quick. This Control B is already on 3, so we don't have to touch that at all. Again, Control C is going to be floating, which is needle position. You're going to see it moving kind of back and forth. And then Control D is going to be set on 0, which again is going to be our stitch width. So that's it. We'll generate this next stitch, and our stitch length again is right around 1 over here. And we'll see what kind of stitch output we get this time, sewing through this single layer of genuine cowhide. All right, make sure I didn't forget anything. And we did, again, just tweak that Control E on top a little bit so that, we can just see what impact it has on that stitch. And we could always set it on 3 up here, and then we could set it on 1 and just kind of goof around a little bit. All right, here we go. Listen to this machine run. Amazing what it sounds like now versus when I first got this up on the workbench. Here we go. Oh, that is super teeny tiny. That is super teeny tiny. I may switch that back to 3 on Control E because I think it's making a little bit too snug. A little bit too snug. Let's see here. Yeah, let's try that on 3 and just see what impact it has. We'll sew the same stitch pattern one more time, and we'll see what impact we can bring to that stitch output. All right, here we go. Yeah, I definitely like that better. 3 is 3 on Control E on top is, in my opinion at least, as far as getting the integrity of that stitch pattern as it shows up on the stitch card, is going to give you a little bit better result. Other people might disagree. They might, again, manipulate that Control E on top all the way up to 7 because it's going to change the way that stitch conformity appears when you've stitched it off. But I'm happy with 3, I think, at least for purposes of this premiere. And once you know, once Jane gets this machine, she might decide to do something totally different, and that's up to her. That's totally up to her. All right, let's do a couple more patterns. I think we have enough for about 1 or 2 more patterns. I'm gonna look over in the red range over here because some of these are kind of fun. Yeah, why don't we try this one? I'll show you this one next. And again, the stitch card that I'm using is my stitch card. It's not going to be going with the machine, but you can buy them online aftermarket. They are available out there. This is the only one that I have, so that's why I'm selfishly hanging on to it. And you can see this is the next stitch that we're going to be doing, the one right above where you can see position A, B, C, D in that little window. So we're gonna have to change Control A and B, and D is going to be alternating. If you watch that Control D, which again is this right here, you're going to see that that's going to be moving during this particular stitch pattern. So let's go back to the machine and make those setting changes. So I'm going to open the little door for Control A. Right now we're on 1, which is exactly what we need. So we're not going to do anything to that. Control B, however, is on 3, so we need to change that over to 2. Is that 2? Yep, that's 2. So I've got that set on 2. C is going to float. D is also going to float in this instance, so we're not going to do anything to those controls. The machine is going to, through that cam stack, is going to be manipulating C and D. You're going to see movement there, which is kind of neat about the camera shot that we have right now, where you can see from a distance what's happening down at the needle, but you can also see just the incredible engineering of how this machine was made to be able to generate those decorative type stitch patterns. So let's try this next one and see what we get. All right, here we go. Yeah, that's kind of a cool one. That's a kind of a cool one. I wouldn't say I have it fine-tuned exactly where I'd want to have it, but it does a good job. It does a very good job. All right, let me clip these threads, and we will move into another stitch pattern. I think I'll have room for basically 2 more stitch patterns. The one that we're going to do next, and then one after that. And then we'll have all this leather filled out beautifully. All right, so let's take a look at the card and see what we might want to do next. Bum, 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 bum. And on this side that I'm looking at right here, as you can see in the camera shot, I believe, this side right here that I'm looking at is for single needle sewing. This side over here would be for dual needle sewing. So you want to make sure you're using the right card side, otherwise you might get some real weird outcomes that you're not wanting. So let's see. I'm kind of divided. There's all kinds of cool patterns here, so we'll have to wait and see. Why don't we do this one way over here? Yeah, let's do this one. I'll show you what we're going to be trying to sew next with Jane's 332. Oops, let me turn my camera screen around so I can see again. So it's that black one right above. And we've sewn that pattern before. There's so many patterns to choose from. We'll probably, for the very final one, we'll pick one of those red ones because there's some real fun ones there. But we'll do the black one, so we've got to make sure that Control A is set on 5, Control B is set on 1, Control C is going to be set on 2, and then Control D is going to be floating. So let's make those changes right now. Control A first, which again is under this little door, and we need to set that on 5. Okay, so we're set on 5 on Control A. Control B is going to be 1. Right now we're on 2, so I'm going to go all the way around. Come back to 1 think that's one. Those little windows are a little bit hard to see in. A little bit hard to see in. That would be maybe a color issue that PFAFF chose for that. Now we're going to be controlling C, and we're going to be putting it in position 2. This again is going to be control C, and position 2 is going to be with the needle in the center position. So we just need to make sure that we're in the center position. So all the way down, if you push it, you're going to be in position 3. Position 2 is in the center, and then if you push it all the way up, it's going to be in position 1. Position 1. So we just have to move it down just a little bit. There we go. So now we've got control C is in position 2. Control B is in position is set on number 1, and then control A on top is set on 5 for this stitch pattern. So, all right, so let's see what we get next. Don't you love when I say that? Let's see what we get next. You know, you never know. You never know here. You just don't know. All right, so here's our next stitch pattern. Here we go. And you notice as you were looking over this way too, probably, you could see our control in the middle, which again is going to be control D, was moving back and forth and kind of manipulating to generate the stitch that we wanted. But again, depending on the settings that you choose outside of the parameters of what the stitch card tells you, if you decide to take a different path than I took, you might get a totally different result as far as the way that stitch pattern looks. I'm not as concerned about the stitch pattern output right now because I know I'm using some discretion in setting things. I'm more concerned about the stitch quality. So let's go ahead and get this in position for our final stitch off with our cam generated stitches, and we will move on to something else. So we've got that in position. I'm going to leave our control E alone for right now, but why don't we pick another one of those red patterns, because I think those are way cool. Let's see what we can pick. That would be kind of a fun one. 7-2. I don't know that I've done this one before, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick this one, and I'll show you what it is. And there may be other ones on the stitch card that if you were sitting in my seat, you would lean towards those, and that's perfectly fine. That's the beauty of having different stitch pattern output options, is everyone might look at it a little bit differently. So we're going to try that one now, the one that's just above the open window. It's got different points. It almost looks like waves, sort of, if you kind of look at it like that, I guess. So we're going to be making sure that Control A is set on 8, Control B is going to be set on 2, C and D are both going to float. So we don't have to set those at any point. They're going to be moving, as you'll see in the camera shot. So let's go over by Control A and set that to 8. Right now we're on 5, it looks like. So now we're on 6, 7. Yep, I turned it too far. I'll turn all the way around again. 7, and now 8. I got a little bit happy with my turning there. And now we're going to make sure that B is going to be set on 2. Right now we are, let's see. Yeah, we were set on 1, so I'm just going to move it 1 to the right to get us to 2. And that's all we have to do, because C and D are going to float. So I'm going to check my reading glasses real quick. I've got these pink ones on, and they pick up a lot of dirt real quick, so let me just wipe them off real quick. Hopefully I can see things a little bit better that way. All right, let's sew off this final cam generated pattern, and we'll see what we think of this one. All right, here we go. Isn't that cool? I just think that's the neatest thing. Wish I had had a bigger piece of material. I could have gone further with that one. Yeah, I'm glad we picked that one. That's a real fun pattern. I think you'll like it when we zoom in on it and we take a closer look. That's a fun stitch pattern. All right, so let's do this, and I'll get my my thread holder all set up. And we'll take a look at these various stitch patterns that we just got done generating. I think we'll look at them vertically. I just have to turn it one way or another so that the bottom is relatively flat. Maybe bring that light in a little bit as well. That will help. I think that'll help. All right, let's zoom in on those and take a look at all the different decorative stitches that we just generated with this 332. I think we'll look at them all at the same time, pretty much. Am I going to have to come off the tripod on these? See what I'm saying when you look at the top of that? There's nothing lightweight about that leather, folks. That's pretty doggone thick stuff. Let's do that. Let's come off the tripod, because when you look at it straight on, it just gives you a little bit better clarity of how that stitch is presenting. Let's do that. Just takes a second. That's the beauty of being able to pop that camera off, isn't it? So these are all the cam-generated stitches that we just generated. And I can zoom in real close on them. Well, sort of close. Look at some of these on the left-hand side first. And really, I've got them reversed because the bottom part of the leather was flatter. So the one over here that you're looking at on the far left is the very last stitch that we did. The one way over here on the right is the first one that we did twice, as I was kind of goofing around with the settings on the machine. But all of them are presenting very, very well, especially when you're talking about sewing through genuine cowhide with that much needle swing and laying down stitches like this. So if you look at the totality of the stitching, I think that this 332, I'll kind of go that distance because otherwise you have to kind of come out too far. I think that this 332 did a very, very fine job. The stitch presentation, the stitch formation, the consistency of the stitch is exactly as we want to see it. Now, are we going to see anything dramatic if we turn it over and look at the lock stitch? Nope, I don't think so. Of course, I'll have to turn it on the side, and I don't know what we're going to be able to see with the nap on there, but we'll do our best to zoom in on it so you can at least catch a glimpse of it. So that's kind of a glimpse of the back side as you're looking through that stitching with that nap. Kind of looking at 2 rows at a time. Funny, that last row there on the bottom. And I could certainly work hard to pull these back, but you can see even through the density of that. Let's just do this. You can even see through the density of that material. The stitching is spot on. It's absolutely spot on. And if we didn't have such a thick nap on the back of this cowhide, you'd be able to make out that even more clearly. Probably also if I had chosen a different color thread as well, it would have popped through a little bit more clearly. But this 332 just did a fabulous job, both with the lock stitch and then certainly with this top stitch as well. As we're looking again at these, these various stitch patterns that we selected. We could have totally chose different ones, but these are the ones that I kind of just randomly chose, and I'm very pleased with the outcome of that. So I'm going to throw that to the back as a pass, And we'll see if we can't do a little bit more sewing on this machine, just to kind of put it to the test. See what we get and not throw a fit, as they say. Alright, why don't we sew a little bit. I think I'll lay down some stitching on this fake leather. It's kind of a leather vinyl stuff. My good friend Maddie from Florida calls it vegan leather. So I think we'll sew a couple things on this vegan leather, and we'll see how this 332 does with that. And we can do a variety of different stitching. We can do a couple of, maybe a straight stitch, different lengths. We can do a zigzag, and maybe we'll even try to lay down some decorative type sewing. And since you've seen these cool controls moving already, we'll move away from those and move down to the needle so you can see the needle area as well. A little bit closer up. And in the meantime, I'll pick a little bit more polka music to put on. Alright, we're going to re-sew the same pattern that we just did, which again is this pattern. I'm just curious to see how it does on this vegan leather stuff. So we're going to, whoops, let's fix that. Hold on a second. We're going to do that same stitch pattern again on a totally different material and just see how this 332 does. Because you change materials, it can have an impact also on how that stitch presents. Alright, let me adjust my lights a little bit. Alright, here we go. Same stitch pattern we just sewed on cowhide. Now we're going to be sewing it on this vegan leather. This fake leather, vinyl, blah, blah, blah stuff. We'll see how it does. All right, you ready? Here we go. Yeah, I like the way that looks, actually. And I did make another little tweak. I took us on Control E on top from around 2.5 or 3 all the way down to 1 just to see what impact it has. So that's kind of cool. Yeah. Let me pick a couple more little patterns we'll sew off on here 1 or 2 more times just to see how it does on this vegan style leather. Just make a little bit bigger spaces maybe. Alright, so you've seen the stitch card thing work, so I'm going to just pick another stitch pattern randomly. So on Control A, I'm going to take us from 8 to 4 up on top. Control B, we're already on 2, so we're going to leave it on 2, and then C and D are going to float. So I'm going to go ahead and sew off this next stitch pattern, which is going to look like this. Let me show it to you. It's kind of a fun one, don't you think, right above there? Almost looks like kind of a confetti type stitch. So again, all I did was change Control A and B. C and D are going to float. As a matter of fact, if you enjoy watching that action, which I think a lot of people do, we'll kind of zoom in like this. That way we're still close to the needle, but you can see those controls working at the same time. So let's sew this next one, see what we get. I like that one. That's fun. That's fun. Let's give that a clip. And just so I don't feel totally guilty, I'm going to cut this leather, or this vegan leather, I'm going to cut this vegan leather down just a little bit. So we can do like one more stitch pattern on it. And then I'll use the remainder of it on another sew off. But you can kind of see what I mean when you look at this. Stuff. They've done a brilliant job. I mean, that looks like a leather nap, doesn't it? It does to me. Leather nap, and even has that grainy appearance to it when you look at it. But this 332, considering that it's probably comprised of leather and vinyl. Vinyl, again, is, as you know, is notorious for causing the stitches to become distorted and manipulated. You know, that stitch integrity. It did a fabulous job. Fabulous job. So let me go ahead and cut this down just a little bit, and then we'll pick one more stitch pattern for this vegan style leather, and we'll move on to some sort of other sew off after that. Should give us just enough room to lay down one more stitch on there. Alright, so what are we going to pick as our final stitch for this vegan style leather? Let me see. That'll be kind of an interesting one, the black one there. Why don't we pick that one? Yeah, I think we'll do this one. Let me go ahead and adjust the camera shot so you can see this, and then we'll sew this one off. So it's that black one right there, almost kind of a diamond type pattern, I guess you would call it maybe. And so we're going to have to make sure that Control A is on 8, Control B on 1, Control C on 2, and D is going to be floating. So on this particular pattern, sew off, the only control we should see moving is going to be this control right here, Control D. Control C, we've seen it moving in other stitch patterns, but it'll be fixed in this particular stitch pattern. So let's zoom in a little bit so we can get a little bit closer to the needle. And then off camera on the top, I'm going to be making sure that we have that set on 8. Right now we're on 4, so 5, 6, 7, 8. Control B is going to be on 1. Right now we're on 2. Okay, so we're on 1. Control C is again going to be this control right here, and it wants us to be on 2, which is going to put that needle position in the center. So that, again, if I push it all the way down, we're in position 3. If I push it all the way up, we're in position 1, which is left needle position, but it's telling us on this one that we need to be in the center. So I'm trying to get it set right on the center. And then again, D we don't have to do anything with, so in this stitch pattern we should see this control right here going back and forth and kind of manipulating that stitch to give us that diamond pattern that we're hoping we'll end up getting. Alright, so let's do this. Just checking in my little screen there. Alright, our final stitch off on this vegan style leather. Alright, here we go. Just get my lights in a little bit too. I was enjoying the movement of that needle so much I kind of lost track of it there. Yeah, that is the correct pattern, but I've got it to, because of my setting of stitch length, it's kind of hard. It's super hard to see the definition on that. So Again, depending on where you decide to set the other controls that the stitch card doesn't give you discretion on, or does give you discretion on, I should say, that stitch appearance may change just totally. So, yeah. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I have room to sew it again, but I'd just be curious. Yeah, I won't bother sewing it again. We'll just look at the pattern as it sewed it, and we'll just kind of leave it like that. I could have certainly chose different settings. I didn't. So it is what it is as far as appearance. But certainly when Jane gets this, she may choose different settings and experiment with a little bit more than I can during a live premiere, and may get a totally different outcome. But let's just take a look at these. Again, we're focused on stitch quality, not necessarily the integrity of the pattern, because depending on where I set this control over here on stitch length, I could have gone down quite a bit further. You can see I'm right around a little bit below 1, but I probably would have been better off if I had gone all the way down to like 0.5 on that. 0.5 is usually a fairly sweet spot for decorative type sew-offs. But still, you know, I'm very happy with the stitch quality. So let's go ahead and look at these, and we'll kind of move on. And we'll look at all of them at the same time. So kind of go up there. Again, we're just going to focus on stitch appearance. And again, realize that instead of using like a standard cotton with a stiffener, where you'd be able to increase stitch definition even higher, we're using a single layer of this vegan style leather, which is a combination of leather and vinyl, so that that stitch definition is not going to be quite at the level that it could be if you chose a different material to sew it on. But I think the machine did a fabulous job. Fabulous job. Let's look at the totality of the stitching. I'll kind of come out that far. I'll go ahead and flip it around. We'll look at the lock stitch. Hopefully we can see the lock stitch. Yeah, you can. And then we'll move on to some other type of material. So on this particular vegan style leather, what I'm seeing is that it's going to require, because of that vinyl element in it, it's going to require a higher setting as far as our upper tension to define that lock stitch better. The lock stitch is a little bit wimpy right now, and that's a direct product of the upper tension not having enough pull to tighten that up real nicely and define it as we would want it to be defined. So that's a simple fix. Again, when you go between materials, depending on the thread you're using, the type of needle, if I were sewing a ton of this vegan style leather, I would take my upper tension where, let's see where it is right now. I would take my upper tension, which is really pretty daggone low. It's right around 5.5, like 5.25. I would probably take it all the way up to 7. And the result would be that it would cause that lock stitch to tighten up dramatically. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have room on here. Maybe we do. But it'd be fun just to experiment with that real quick, wouldn't it? What I could do is grab another piece of vegan leather. Let me see if I have another piece cut already. And we can sew the same stitch pattern we just sewed, but increase that upper tension to see what impact it has. I'm just going to take this extra one that I have and kind of cut it down so that I don't waste it. Okay, so I'm going to take this upper tension on camera. We're right around, right around 5.5. I'm going to take it all the way up to 7. so we can test the impact that we can bring. And we'll sew exactly the same, sorry about that. We'll sew exactly the same stitch pattern that we just sewed just a moment ago. And I'd have to remind myself which one that is. I think it is our little diamond thing, isn't it? Let me just check our settings. 8, 1, 2, yep, that's it. So we're going to be resewing this diamond style pattern. You saw me just increase our upper tension from around 5.5 up to 7, and we're going to resew this diamond pattern one more time to see what impact we can bring. I probably also will shorten the stitch a little bit more. Right now we are a little bit away from 1, and I'd like to shorten that even more. So I'm going to bring, you're going to see me on camera bring that down just a little bit more, because I think that'll give us a little bit better definition as well. So let's head over to the needle. We increased our upper tension. We also, I'm plugging my camera back in real quick, hold on a second. We increased our upper tension from 5.5 to 7, and then we also just shortened the stitch a little bit more. We went from 1 to right around down to 0.5. So we'll see what kind of outcome we get this time. Everything else stayed exactly the same. So sometimes subtle differences can make a big difference. Maybe it won't make a big difference. We'll see. And I'm going to move this other sew off to the side just so we can compare it after we get done running this stitch off. So let me get that into position. Again, this is that vegan style leather. We'll buzz down and see if we've been successful in tightening up that lock stitch, and also just see what impact, if any, we brought to the appearance of that stitch as well. All right, here we go. Oh, I thought I'd end in the up position. I was so close. So close. Yeah, I think. Oh yeah, that definitely, we definitely just brought an impact. Those two little tweaks, increasing upper tension, and then also making that adjustment on stitch length. Just tightening up a little bit more. We've created a very delicate change as far as how that stitch is presenting, so I'm very pleased with that. So I'm going to put these kind of side by side, the ones that we did initially, and I'll have them lined up so that we can look at them side by side, see what we think. Yeah, let's see, like that maybe. I'm glad I added those extenders to these sew-off holders that Maddie sent me, because that really gives me a lot more flexibility in how I can present the stitch-offs once we do them on these confirmation sew-offs. Okay, let's adjust this and take a look at these. So the last, hold on one second. The last stitch pattern we just did is this one. It should be the one on the far, yeah, the one on the far left. This one right here. It should be the same pattern. Now if we just jump over to that single one that we just did, let's see what impact it has by just manipulating that stitch length. This is tricky stuff to sew, it really is. It's tricky stuff to sew. Yeah, so that's the way it looks now with that little adjustment on stitch length, upper tension. And it's, it's possible that I took that upper tension too far. We'll have a real nice lock stitch, but maybe we'll take something away from that top stitch. So this is after our adjustments. This again is before our adjustments. And let's just turn these over so we can look at the lock stitches now and kind of compare those. Because I was feeling like the one on the left here was a little bit loosey-goosey. So we increased that upper tension. Let's see if we had an impact as far as how that lock stitch is going to present. If this will stand up for me, I hope it does. So let's zoom way in. So the stitch that we're kind of comparing it to is now on the right because we kind of flipped it around. So let me see if I can move the camera real slow. We'll look at that. So you can see, the lock stitch is fine. There's no missed stitches or stitch distortion, but it's just a little bit loose. It's just a little bit loose. Getting some feedback from my speaker. Let me turn that down for a second. Let's go down that one more time. Just want to see if we can see what the impact is. And if I have to come off the tripod, I'll do that. All right, let's go over to this other one now. Take a look at that, see what impact, if any, we brought. Yeah, I'm liking the look of that better. All in all, it tightened it up nicely. I am going to come off the tripod just so we can take a closer look at that. Just bear with me for a second here. Look at this straight on. So that was the before. And this is the after. Where am I? I'm way off course, sir. Yeah, we definitely went the right direction. I probably would tweak it even a little bit more. Because again, when you're dealing with a vinyl material, it's going to make it very difficult for that thread to be pulled back up. Especially when you're dealing with a decorative stitch that has all the needle swing. But if you compare the tightness and the definition of that lock stitch here compared to over here, see how much looser that is? You can see those loops kind of sticking up compared to over here where it really snugged them up nicely. And again, we might want to go a little bit further. We went up to right around 7. If we sew a ton of this vegan type leather, we might want to look at going up to 7.5 and then adjust it back down when we're doing other sewing. But from this to that, you can see all of those were kind of loosey-goosey. We definitely brought the right impact, so I'm really pleased with that. I'm going to throw those to the back as a pass, and we'll see what else we want to try sewing off real quick on this 332. Yeah, it's kind of fun to go through that process together, isn't it, a little bit? So the first thing I'm going to do, since I think we're done with our decorative stitching, is I'm going to take our Control E and I'm going to move it from 3 all the way back to 0. So we basically have we've shut the cam function off now, put it down to 0. With that being off, it doesn't matter what this is set at. Control A, Control B, Control C is just our needle position at this point because our cam function is off. And our needle position is at center where we want it to be anyway. So we'll just leave it on center. Our Control D is on 0 right now, which is perfect because I want to do a straight stitch. And now we're going to adjust our stitch length back from way down over here on 0.5 all the way to the max, bringing it up to 5. Make sure. The tricky thing about these 332s is when you're pushing this stitch length way down to say 0.5, notice what else is moving. See how it kind of moves that reverse? So you just need to make sure when you move it all the way back and you say, I want to do a big straight stitch, move it all the way back, you also have to make sure you move this back as well. Otherwise, the machine will do some funky things on you. So it's all the way now for forward sewing. Again, if we wanted to sew in reverse, we just swing it over here. But we don't want to sew in reverse right now. So I'm going to leave it all the way over there. This is on 5. This is on 0 to give us a straight stitch. Again, our cam function is off, so it doesn't matter what this is at this point or what this is at. And then our needle position, which is Control C, is going to be right on center, where, you know, that's where most of us are going to have it, I think, in most instances. So the only thing we're going to tweak a little bit so that we don't take away from our top stitch is we're going to now back off our upper tension from 7. We were right around here. I might just come up a hair because we are going to be sewing some genuine elk hide. In fact, I'll come up to 6. Just so that we don't lose the definition on that lock stitch when we're going to be sewing material like this. And we might even look at doing a second layer. So when you're talking about thickness like that, having a little bit higher upper tension setting to pull that thread back up is definitely a positive, definitely something you want to do. All right, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and get the camera back up on the tripod, and we will finish off some of these last sew-offs on Jane's machine. And since we're going to be doing a straight stitch and those cool little knobs are not going to be moving and hopping all over the place, we'll just stay down by the needle. This is a fabulous machine, isn't it? It's part of the reason is Heidi and I were talking, Heidi from Switzerland, we were talking about what her sewing needs are, what she's going to be sewing, thicknesses, all that. The PFAFF 332 just came to mind straight away. Just right away, because it's going to give her some decorative options to sew, add some pretty accents to leather pieces that comprise the shoes and that, but at the same time have the grit and the strength to go through all of that leather without struggling. So, and that's the approach I like. I don't like a one-fits-all type approach. I like to fit that machine. I like to fit that machine very specifically to that customer based on their specific sewing needs. One size fit all will make some customers happy and others not happy, and I want all the customers to be happy. So let's try manic polka, crazy polka, I guess, huh? All right, let's buzz down and see if we can do some genuine elk hide. We'll start with a single layer, and then we'll see if we can step it up to 2 layers. All right, here we go. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous how easy that was. Oh well. Boom, 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 boom. You can't see off camera, but Herr Obermeister was just dancing. He loves dancing a lot. All right, so let's go ahead and push this up. I'm actually going to do it like this so I don't sew over my original stitch. Let's go and push it up from a single layer now up to 2 layers of this genuine elk hide. I'll turn my screen around. So this is kind of what we're looking at right now as far as thickness. It's going to be right around 8 to 10 ounces of leather, right in that range. And again, elk hide is chemically processed, so guess what? It does not like to be pierced with a needle. That chemical processing really makes this even more tough to get through. So we'll see how Jane's machine does. All right, 2 layers of genuine elk hide. Here we go. Boy, that was incredibly tough. I would say almost impossible. I was really expecting failure any second then. It seemed like it was really struggling and had a lot of difficulty in getting through that. Not even close. Not even close to a challenge for this 332 after it's been on the workbench. And you'll see other 332s. I really want to emphasize this to any of you that are new to the channel. You'll see other 332s that will try to do the same sew off you just saw. And it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. There's no way. But this particular 332, after I went through it from bobbin to balance wheel, it got the job done so easy, it's just plain ridiculous. Just plain ridiculous. All right, let me set these up and we can take a little bit closer look at them. Try it like that because it's a matter of getting it balanced. Okay, I think I've got that positioned pretty well. I don't know that I like the color of this thread. It's almost kind of a powder blue, but it doesn't do quite as well in showing up on camera. That's why for a while there I was devoted to white thread, because white thread on camera does generally a fabulous job. When you go to some of the other color variations, you just get some weird outcomes sometimes in being able to see it. But when I get this close on it, oh, I got to plug my camera in again. Hold on a second. When you get this close to it, even from this distance, there we go. Even from this distance, you can see just how beautiful that stitching is. And again, we're talking about 2 layers of genuine elk hide. Oops. So yeah, here I think, and I'm actually going to sew one more row. I'm going to do one more row. And the reason I'm going to do one more row is, remember I increased the upper tension to 6 because we were going to be doing this elk hide. And when you increase the upper tension again, it's going to define that lock stitch more. It's going to give more power to the machine upper tension to pull that thread back up from the bottom to define that lock stitch. But if you go a little bit too far, the result you get is that it does take away a little bit from the consistency and the definition of that top stitch. Now if you look at the row on the left, which I believe is the first row that we did, it's absolutely, matter of fact, I'll try to focus just on that row. It's absolutely spot on. The formation, the definition, the alignment, the presentation of the stitch is spot on, exactly the way we want to see it. Now if we go over to the other row, generally we've got some real good definition on the top stitch, but you'll see, let me take my hand off the camera, you'll see a little bit in the realm of where some of those stitches don't match up just perfectly on that right row. And part of it is the sheer thickness of what we're going through and the fact that I'm not using a leather needle. But beyond that, it's also the fact that our upper tension may be torqued up a little bit too high right now. So as that bobbin case is trying to pull down to define that top stitch, it's struggling a little bit. It's struggling a little bit. So I'm going to do one more stitch row. And again, I did quite a bit of sewing on this needle before, so it may not have any impact at all. But we're going to try it anyway, just out of curiosity. Where am I? Good Lord, I'm way off camera. There we go. That's what I was aiming for. So right now on our upper tension, we're set on 6. I'm going to back it off a little bit. I'm going to back it off from 6 back down to 5.5, right in that range. And we're going to sew this one more time by just making that simple adjustment from 6 down to right around 5.5 and see if we see any difference. We might not see any difference. Again, maybe this needle is just dulling down a little bit, and I always make it a point to put a fresh needle in before I ship the machine. But maybe it will have an impact. We'll see. So let's put this leather back up to be sewed off one more time, and I'm actually gonna, so I don't get goofy and confused, I'm actually gonna mark it with just a little dot. So if I somehow drop the leather or we get turned around somehow, we know which row is which row. So I'm gonna put a little dot right up here. But that is our final row that we're going to be sewing off, just so we can see what impact that subtle upper tension adjustment has, if any, in giving us just a little bit more definition on that top stitch. That's what we're looking for, is a little bit more definition, tightening that up a little bit, giving a little bit more a more consistent form than it's getting at this point, with that upper tension having been turned up to 6. Okay, here we go. Let's try this last sew off and see what impact we have on Jane's machine. All right. Take up arms all the way up. All right, here we go. Yeah, I'm happier with that. I'm happier with that, for sure. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, let's give that a clip, and then we'll look at what impact we brought. Again, it's so interesting that the tug-of-war match between the upper tension and the bobbin case, when you understand how they think, it's almost like dealing with nations. You know, when you're a leader of a country and you're trying to figure out how the other folks are thinking, all of a sudden, when you figure out their language, you figure out how they're thinking, you can all of a sudden have a lot of success that you weren't having before. And the language of the sewing machine is pretty simple. We've got to find that sweet balance between the upper tension being defined and the lock stitch being defined, but not over defining one or the other. So let's see if we had any impact. Let's see if we had any impact. I just got to bend this back a little bit so we can get it so it'll hopefully stay in place while I'm trying to show it to you. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Maybe no impact, maybe something that's more noticeable. We will see. So again, the little black mark signifies where we just sewed. We just did that. The row to the left of it is the row that we did before. So let's just see what impact, if any. It's real subtle, But I do like, if you look real closely, let me get the camera standing still. If you look real closely, let me go up just a little bit because we're kind of looking at the end loop there that's not closed off. If you look real closely at that stitch row in the center to the left, you're going to notice that that loop is a little bit, it's a little softer. The row that we did last on the far right is going to have a little bit more tightness to it because we increased that, we made an adjustment on that upper tension. So that we adjusted the upper tension down so that that bobbin case would have a little bit more control in pulling that thread down to define this top stitch. And by doing that, we've now given greater victory to that top stitch in being able to stand out more. Again, if you look at some of the stitching on the left, you can see that it's a little softer. And softer is not a bad thing, but when you're looking for that stitch really to pop, defining that lock stitch and top stitch just right, so you get the right the top pop factor and the right lock stitch pop factor is what we're aiming for. So I'm pleased with the subtle adjustment that we just made to that final row to give it more consistency in how it presents. Both stitches are good, don't get me wrong. Really all three stitches are solid. You look at them side by side. But, and again, it depends on your vantage point. But for me at least, I prefer that final row that we just did, where I marked it with that permanent marker on the far right. But hey, we went through 2 layers of genuine elk hide, folks. It's not easy peasy at all. And it's going to be hard to see that lock stitch. I'll spin it around. You know, as you kind of look at this, the side. It's going to be real tough to see it just because of that nap. But we'll zoom in on it and see what we can see. Yeah, that nap makes it really, really tough. Really tough. We won't spend much time trying to see through that, and I could try pulling it back, but yeah, it's kind of futile unless you put those back to back and have a smooth side on both sides. So at any rate, the long and short of it is we made a subtle adjustment. I felt like that top stitch was a little bit weak, so we backed off the upper tension a little bit. And I feel like we were, oh my Lord. I feel like I need to learn to remember to lock the camera. That's what I feel like. I feel like we were successful. Yeah, you can kind of look at it sideways too. That was not my intention, but hey, things sometimes work that way, don't they? Yeah, I feel like we were successful in making that subtle adjustment. So again, you can kind of look at the rows like this horizontal as well, which I think is sometimes helpful to change the way that you're looking at that stitch. And again, I think a fresh needle would also benefit us as well. But as we move down those 3 rows, we've got 3 very good looking rows. But again, that top row is kind of my favorite because that top stitch is really, really a consistent pop and presentation to it. They're all good. They're all really good. But again, when you're up close at the workbench, it gives you a little bit different perspective. Yeah, that's a definite success. We'll go ahead and throw that to the rear. And I could do, just taking a look here. I've got blue denim, which is not going to show up real well with this light thread. I guess I could try it. Yeah, why don't we do it? We'll go ahead and do a little bit of denim, and then we'll wrap this up. And what I might do for this denim is I might lay down a zigzag, and then I might also look at, yeah, let me cut this down a little bit. I've got too big of a piece. We'll lay down a zigzag and a straight stitch, and then we'll consider the deal done. Because we've done a ton of sew-offs already on this 332. Okay, I'm going to throw that to the side. And we're only going to do 4 layers. Again, my goal is not to show the max of the machine. We'd be here all day long on this 332. We're going to lay down just a straight and a zigzag on 4 layers of this heavy grade denim. And that will wrap this up. So let me get this into position. We will lay down a zigzag first. So we got our zigzag set. Just want to check to see my other settings as well. Okay, so let's lay down a zigzag. We'll lay down a straight stitch next to it. And I think we have tested this 332 sufficiently so it can head towards Conroe, Texas. Get my take-up arm all the way up. All right, here we go. Yeah, I didn't do a fabulous job of keeping that material straight, but the machine did a good job. All right, let me give this a clip. And now we'll lay down a straight stitch next to this. It's the same thing when you're going between a wide field of materials, as I tend to do during these live premieres to demonstrate the readiness of the machine. You may have to do a little bit of tweaking on that tension as you're bouncing around through different thicknesses and different materials and everything else, just to maintain that stitch integrity. And that's okay. That's okay. All right, let's buzz down with a straight stitch and we will consider the confirmation sew-offs complete. Here we go. Yeah, I don't get an A for straight, but I get an A for effort. All right, let me give that a clip. Oh yeah, that's some good looking stitching right there. Let's take a look at these. Let me grab my little sew-off holder thingy and we'll see if we can, as a matter of fact, what I might do on these, because it's blue on blue, let me see if I can't maybe come off the tripod and we'll take a closer look at these just so we can see them more clearly. Move those lights in as well, give us some better lighting. Alright, let's take a look at these. So we're going to look at that top stitch first. We'll see how that bobbin case is doing as far as working. And I could see my camera drop down. Y'all didn't see that, did you? I bet you my camera dropped down. And I don't know if you saw any of that. If you didn't, now you can see it. So creates a little bit of suspense, doesn't it? Creates a little bit of suspense. I'd done really well up to that point as far as remembering to change the angle of the camera. Again, it'd be a lot easier if I had a camera operator, but I don't. Alright, let's zoom in on these. So on the left we've got our zigzag. Again, we're looking at the top part of the stitch. Right next to it we're looking at that straight stitch. You can pretty much see both at the same time, and both are absolutely spot on. Again, when you incorporate needle swing, you may have to, especially on that top stitch, if you're looking at wanting a really nicely defined top stitch with that zigzag, you may have to back off that upper tension just slightly to make that top stitch pop more. I think we've got a fairly good balance right here as I'm looking at it. And you don't want to back off that upper tension too much, because then when that upper tension is trying to pull that thread back through and define that lock stitch, it's not going to have enough pull. But I think all in all we've got a real good balance, at least from what I'm seeing at this point. And again, we're not talking about a super easy sew-off here. We're talking about 4 layers of heavy grade denim. So let me see if I can, the bottom of that material is not cut straight, so I've got to try to get it balanced. Now we're going to look at that lock stitch and see how this 332 did. Once I get my camera to focus. Come on, camera. So here's our lock stitch, and I am very satisfied with that. That lock stitch looks like it's exactly as it should be. So at least on the 4 layers of denim, I think we've got a real good balance right now between that upper tension working to pull that stitch up and the lock, to define that lock stitch, and that bobbin case pulling down to define that top stitch. So I would call that a definite pass. I think we've seen it up close and personal. And also, if you kind of look at it from the side, it gives you an idea of the thickness of what we just kind of sewed through there. There as well. You can really see the thickness there. So that's a definite pass. I'm going to go ahead and throw this to the rear with the other sew-offs that we've done. And I had some other sew-offs in the wings that we could have done, but I think we put this machine to the test, don't you? I think we can be pretty satisfied at this point that the machine is sewing as it should. Now, a couple other things to show you real quick. Let me come out on the shot. Talking about the needle, we talked about the needle a little bit. The needle on this 332, the flat side is going to go to the rear, and you're going to be threading the needle from front to back. Now with that said, let me see if I can real quick tighten up this thread so we can look at that thread path real quick for threading the machine, because I don't think, if we covered that, I think I may have raced through it a little bit, so I want to go over that one more time just to make sure that you're comfortable with the threading of it. The other thing I'll mention real quick, and it'll be easier to probably show you by illustration than trying to describe it to you, as far as the bobbin itself, which is right in here, obviously the bobbin case and bobbin are down there. When you're wanting to slide that bobbin into the bobbin case to orientate the thread correctly, you want to have the bobbin case in your right hand, and you want to have the bobbin in your left hand, and you want that thread to be coming over the top. Now that's, some of you might have gotten that right away. Others might be saying, okay, I'm not quite sure I followed that. So let me actually show you in the book so you can see an illustration of what I just described. I could have marked the page, but that takes away all the drama of finally getting to it, right? Alright, we're almost there. We're almost there. We're there. Yay! And I can actually use this thread holder too to kind of hold that up a little bit. So you can see here, this is kind of what I was trying to describe to you. To get that thread orientated correctly on the 332, you'll hold the bobbin case with the slat. See the slat opening on the bobbin case right at the top of there? And then you'll hold the bobbin in your left hand. You'll slide it in with that thread coming over the top. So as it's unwinding, it's going to be unwinding which direction? Clockwise or counterclockwise? If you said or typed in the chat clockwise, then you're spot on, because that's the direction that that bobbin is going to be unwinding, is clockwise. At least as we're looking at it here, once you slide it into the machine, I guess technically, once it's in the machine, it's going to be unwinding counterclockwise, because it'll be rotating, that bobbin will be rotating in the bobbin case counterclockwise to the left. But as we're looking at it right now, it'll be unwinding to the right clockwise. Anyway, forget all the clockwise and counterclockwise stuff so I don't confuse you. Just do it like this. Hold your bobbin case in your right hand, hold the bobbin in the left hand, and have the thread coming over the top. So, but yeah, for the record, once it's inserted, that bobbin will be unwinding counterclockwise. Think about it kind of plugged into the machine. That's the way it'll be unwinding. So, yeah. And this is one of shameless plug real quick. Nothing fancy dancy about this, but I do have a lot of folks that get them. This is my reprint of the original PFAFF 332 manual, and I do offer this on eBay. I think that the delivered cost, I think I do it with free shipping. It's $17. Nicely printed. It's quite a thick manual, as you can see. And then I get it professionally bound so that it's a resource that'll last, and that'll, you can use it daily, and it's going to hold together very nicely. So yeah, if you have an interest, I can send you the link, or just look up on eBay or whatever, and hopefully you'll find it. So, all right. Well, this is the German engineered PFAFF 332, and we've done a variety of different sew-offs on this machine, obviously wanting just to have the confidence that it's ready to start heading towards Conroe, Texas. So as I kind of have the stack here, we did denim 4 layers. We did 2 layers of genuine cowhide. Again, nothing super easy peasy about that. We did this vegan style leather. We did a single layer just to kind of retest that decorative stitch and see what impact we had in tweaking the upper tension. Then we did this layer as well with a variety of different decorative stitches on it, and it did a fabulous job. And then obviously we laid down a field of decorative stitches on this single layer, about 4 or 5 ounces of genuine cowhide. And this 332 did just an outstanding job. It really did. It did a super job. So I'm really pleased, and I feel like this. And also I'd shown these to you before. Harold Burmeister was holding them, but we also did these decorative sew-offs as well on the machine as well. And actually, my settings there were probably a lot better. That's more representative of what you kind of can expect with decorative sew-offs when you've got the all the settings correct, including stitch length. So fabulous machine, ready to go to work. And I'm going to be soon preparing, or I anticipate preparing, another machine similar to this for my friend Heidi from Switzerland, so that we can get a great German machine in Switzerland and get it serving the needs of that wonderful lady. All right, so let's end with a little bit of music, because I've been blah, 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 blahing for quite a while. How about Four Bears Polka? Four Bears Polka. And of course, I'm going to include a few goodies with this as well. I mean, after all, it is a German sewing machine. I'll throw those sew-offs to the back and our thread holder to the back. And I like including little surprises like this. Yeah, Toffee Crunch is pretty normal, I think. Pretty normal. This stuff's a little bit off the deep end a little bit. The dark chili pepper chocolate. I haven't tried it. I don't know that I will. How about you, Haribo-Meister? You put it on ice cream? Seriously? Okay. Yeah, why not? Cool. All right, well, thanks for your attention in the class today. And I have to admit that I didn't even ring the bell. So I guess I'll have to ring it twice. Once for the beginning of class. Once for the end of class. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. And this is going to be heading towards Conroe, Texas now. Yeah, 0 calories. You gotta love it. Look at that. Cool. All right, well, y'all take care. And remember, yesterday is history, tomorrow a mystery. But today is a gift, which is why we call it the present. Take care.